Podcast City Network.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 143 of the Nest Podcast. I'm your boy, Brandon, joined as always by my co-host, Zach. Zach, what's up, my man?
What up?
Dude, the draft just happened. We're super amped about it, super excited. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into about that and all the happenings going on around the National Football League. We're waiting on a special guest, Adam, the bearded Ballesta himself, to join us live tonight. He's running into a little bit of issues, so we're just going to kind of wait for him to come on before we get into that draft analysis. But there is a lot of other stuff going on that we can talk about to kind of fill that time so that our listeners can enjoy the great things that the Nest Podcast likes to bring to them on a weekly basis. And of course, that means Major League Baseball. It was noted today, breaking news, that Dodgers starting pitcher Dustin May is going on the shelf with season-ending Tommy John surgery. Ouch. Big blow to the Dodgers, bigger blow to Dustin May, who is going to have to miss the entire season. He's been cruising this year with a 2.74 ERA. He had 35 strikeouts and only 23 innings of work. This is a kid that's really coming on into his own there in the Dodgers lineup, and it kind of sucks that he's going to miss out on the remainder of the season. What do you think?
Yeah, that's terrible for the Dodgers. I mean, that starting rotation was looking pretty nasty with Kershaw, Trevor Bauer, and Walker Buehler, and he was just another tool in that arsenal. But yeah, it sucks to see. You know, it happens to a lot of pitchers, if not all of them, at some point. He's young, so I expect him to bounce back and be okay. But again, yeah, he was cruising, so hopefully he can bounce back and have a good rehab and get right back to it.
Yeah, I hope so too, man, because he is one of those guys that he's an immense talent. But fortunately for the Dodgers, they're so deep. Like you mentioned, Kershaw, Bauer, Buehler, and then, oh, by the way, they also have a Cy Young pitcher coming out of their bullpen in David Price, who could easily slot in there to be that starter once again. So I think the Dodgers will be okay, but they've also got a little more bad news on the reliever front, and that's according to Jorge Castillo of the LA Times, Brusdar Graterol will undergo an MRI tomorrow. He has not thrown a ball since going on the IL, so things aren't looking good for him either. Is this Dodger team at risk of just completely falling apart 1 month into the season?
I think they're still going to be okay. Like you said, they have a lot of weapons. These are two big ones for sure, but this is kind of expected from a guy like Graterol, who throws so damn hard every pitch.
Yeah.
He's probably, if he can keep his velocity up, I would imagine he'll probably have like 2 Tommy John surgeries in his career.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for these guys that throw so hard to end up with multiple TJ surgeries. Look at guys like Nathan Eovaldi, who's had 2 and then also had a surgery to remove loose bodies in his elbow. It is common for these guys, you know, easy gas, easily hitting 100 miles plus on pretty much every pitch. Graterol's hitting 95, 96 on a sinker. Unreal. But yeah, you're right. It does suck, but you know, it is kind of to be expected whenever you're throwing the ball that hard. Also noted today for the White Sox, some more bad news for them. It looks like Luis Robert is going to miss 12 to 16 weeks with a hip injury after he took a tumble trying to leg out an infield single. He kind of tripped over the first base, and the first baseman took a bad spill right there on the ground, and he had a hard time getting back up. He's going to miss 3-4 months or so out of the season, which pretty much will take him into playoff push time, which who knows how healthy he's going to be when that time comes. Add that to the injury news from a few weeks ago where Eloy Jimenez had a ruptured pectoral. He's out for like 5 to 6 months with that injury. Suddenly, the White Sox, who were looking so dominant, are in desperate need of some outfielders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rough. You hate to see people go down with injuries. It's just terrible.
Yeah, we got a comment about the Dodgers coming in right now a little bit after. LJ Weinberg says it was a big blow, but they also have Julio Urias, who's been somewhat lights out, ready to come in and fill in those roles. Huge anytime you have those guys that can step in and fill in for those injuries. And the Dodgers farm system has been ridiculous over the years. It's been built to be a sustainable winning bullpen, a sustainable winning organization. And I think that's what a lot of teams are striving to get to now.
Right, which is especially impressive for the Dodgers because they spend so much money. Typically, the teams that spend a lot of money get hit with the luxury tax and stuff like that, and they have to give up draft picks and stuff like that just for the sheer amount of just cash on the books. And somehow the Dodgers can do both. They can have a good farm system, and they can sign big name free agents out there like you've seen them do before. So they're a pretty unique team.
Yeah, it must be nice to have the best of both worlds going on there in Dodger Town. One final note on MLB before I see our guest is coming into the lobby. I want to say Red Sox closer Matt Barnes was named the American League Reliever of the Month for April. And I said it on the Pesky Report a few weeks ago that I was never really a Matt Barnes fan, but this year I've started to come around on him, and he's won me over quite a bit. He's been lights out for the month, and I hope that trend continues. He's been good for the past couple of years, but I've always had like that feeling whenever he came on because of past experiences and stuff like that when he's blown games late. But he's figured it out, and he's doing well, although he did give up the game-winning run yesterday against the Rangers. So that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the show the bearded Ballesta himself, Mr. Adam Ballesteros. What is up, Adam? How's it going, man?
Hey guys, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, of course. Anytime. You're always welcome around here. We're actually excited to have you. And we've been talking for a few minutes about baseball, but we prefaced it with saying that we were bringing you on to talk about the NFL and the NFL draft specifically. I know you're there in Houston, and there have been a lot of things going around in the news about Houston and all that. And we may get into some of that here in a little bit if you're up to date on any of the Deshaun Watson news. But what did you think of the draft?
Honestly, man, I was entertained by it. I thought it was pretty good. I think most teams did well. I don't think the Cowboys really capitalized like they should have, but, they kind of sat back and, waited for a quarterback to fall their lap. And Micah Parsons, although that's a great pick for them, I think it's not really an immediate need that they need. But, for the most part, it was interesting. It was crazy to see Mac Jones fall all the way to 15 for the Patriots, which was not, I know for you especially, you're looking more for like a Justin Fields type, dual threat or quarterback, but Mac Jones is much better than, just having Cam Newton, controlling the team by himself. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good draft for most teams. The Seahawks, off the top of my head, I don't know what they were doing either. I don't think they really picked too well either. But yeah, for the most part, it was good. I think we could have done well without the whatever that band was that was playing. I think, all the interruptions that we got were a little too much, but
what is that? Kings of Leon?
Kings of Leon.
Yeah. Well, before you get too far into what you're talking about, I want to backtrack a little bit. You were talking about the Mac Jones pick. Yes, I was, we were texting live during the draft, and I was a little bit upset whenever the Bears jumped forward and picked Justin Fields because that was the guy that I wanted once he started slipping. But I've got a clip prepared from an episode of the Nest podcast from back in January, where I made a little bit of a bold prediction, and I'm going to go ahead and play that right now for the people. the future quarterback of the New England Patriots is about to take the field in the national title game, and he plays for Alabama.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Would they have to trade for that draft pick, or what do you think?
The Pats should have the 15th overall draft pick in this upcoming draft, and Mac is projected to go about 15. So.
Really? Wow.
Boom.
So not only did I predict that he would end up as the draft pick of the New England Patriots, but I also predicted that he would be there at 15, which is important to note because the Pats didn't have to trade anything to get him. They didn't have to move up. They didn't have to give up significant capital. They didn't have to trade any players to move up to get their guy. They just had to sit back and wait. They did exactly what you said the Cowboys were trying to do, is sit back and wait. And then Cowboys ultimately missed out on what they wanted, traded with a division rival to move back a few spots, ended up getting a good cornerback out of the deal, but they didn't get the guy they wanted. The Pats got exactly what they wanted by just staying put and waiting. And I'm going to go ahead and say this one. Once Mac officially picks his jersey number, I'm going to go ahead and order that one on NFLshop.com because that is the quarterback of the future for the New England Patriots.
You know, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. With all the hype going into the draft, I mean, if you talked months ago, he was going to be a late first-round pick, and then all the hype started building up, and then we started talking about, you know, top 5 potential, going top 3, and we discussed about, hey, you know, top 3 is a little much. It's a little too much up there, you know, too much money to pay for Mac Jones, but even with all the hype going on, and he still fell all the way back to 15, the Patriots didn't have to do anything. I mean, it's almost like destiny. I mean, this is kind of where he was supposed to go. The same thing, you know, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban kind of run the same kind of show at each other's camps. And I think he'll plug in well. And I think that's the kind of quarterback that, you know, the Patriots are going to thrive with for the next couple of years. If not, I mean, it's tough to compare him to TB12. I mean, you can't really do that with anybody coming up, but the dude's got a good head on his shoulders. He just won a national championship. Of course, he doesn't have Devontae Smith and the rest of the track team that he has catching the football for him. But, I mean, it's professional football. They're going to get the players and, you know, plug them in, and I think he'll do just fine.
No, but he does have Jonnu Smith, and he also has Hunter Henry, and he's also got a plethora of new wide receiver weapons that will be out there. And he has a former NFL MVP that's going to serve as his mentor for the season. So I think Mac Jones is in a good place. And to tip the cap to you and your Bama connection, Bill did move up in the second round to get Christian Barmore, also from Alabama, who is
his center,
who is probably one of the best interior defenders in the entire draft. How he slipped to the second round baffles me and a lot of draft experts because he was projected to be a first-round guy. Somehow he slipped to the second round, and Bill moved up to get him. And that I give the New England Patriots an A. I'm not going to give them the A+, but I do give them an A for their overall draft.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think so too. Anytime you can get some Alabama players is a good time to do so, because that's the cream of the crop. And like Adam said, he's going to have to play with, you know, people that they're professionals, sure, but it's not the A team like he's used to maybe. But then again, he was playing against, you know, all of the best SEC schools, so he's had the best defensive people being thrown at him. So he should be good to go once he learns their playbook and all that kind of stuff.
The only thing that really worries me is quarterbacks from Alabama haven't really had the best track record in the NFL. I mean, like Jared said in his comment, if Tua can break loose, then the Dolphins are really going to be tough to beat. But that's the huge question mark for the Dolphins. Is Tua going to be able to put it all together at the NFL level? I think Mac is a completely different quarterback than Tua is, so that they've got that going for each other. But yeah, the Bama quarterback has never really been the guy in the NFL. So we'll see what happens with that. But
well, neither has an Ohio State quarterback either.
Very true.
So it would have been a gamble either way.
Very good point. With the 4th pick of the NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons selected the best non-quarterback player in the draft. Pitts, a great pick. You got to think that that's going to make the Atlanta Falcons offense even more formidable. But I scratch my head wondering why a team that has had so much trouble on the defensive side of the ball would continue to add first round draft picks to the offensive side. You know, we've talked about it a lot on here, Zach, that the Falcons, they've had like what? I think 10 out of 11 starters were first round draft picks at some point in their career. And now they've just added another one. I feel like they would have been better suited to draft a better defensive player and then re-up on Hayden Hurst, which was a quality tight end who they ended up going away from his contract. What do you guys think about that pick? And what do you think about how the Atlanta Falcons are operating right now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of like what you're saying with Hayden Hurst, I think after Tony Gonzalez's departure, I think the Falcons got a little, tight end drunk, and they wanted to, find that same person. So you have, Hayden Hurst, you have Austin Hooper, you have all these guys they try to plug in, don't really pan out to be that same person. And when you have this once in a lifetime talent come up at pick 4, I mean, I think you do have to get him. It's one of those things, kind of like the 49ers, for example, how everyone's talking about, oh, how they not pick Mac Jones or how they pick Trey Lance over Justin Fields. They're playing it off. I think they always had their mind on Trey Lance, but they're playing it off and playing the cards and holding him close to their chest saying, hey, we read all the evaluations, we did everything, and this is what we went with. Just in case Trey Lance doesn't work out, they can say, well, we thought about Mac Jones, but, it was just at the time we couldn't really make it, because if they came out of the gate months ago saying Trey Lance and Trey Lance is a bust, Kyle Shanahan and all those guys would be, ousted out of town. I think when you have a huge tight end like Kyle Pitts coming up, you got to take him at 4, no matter the situation on your team.
That Trey Lance selection really does make me scratch my head because he really doesn't have much of a resume to go on. For his entire 3-year college career, he only has 19 games that he's played. In last season alone, in 2020, he only played 1 game, and he went 15 for 30 for 149 yards. That's not anything standing out. And Mac Jones and Justin Fields both played in the national title game. So I don't really understand this draft pick from the 49ers. Yeah, maybe they can say like, oh, well, we're banking on him being a lot better than the numbers in college indicate. Maybe, but that was a stretch, in my opinion, to take him at 3.
Yeah, huge stretch.
100%.
To me, that sounds like either scouts or the GM or somebody were looking for something specific, and they saw it in Trey Lance and just said, you know what, that's our guy. We're going to make him work. We're going to plug him in. He fits our system, whatever. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. But like you said, that was a huge reach to go and grab him. I think he would have been available way after that pick. Yeah,
Brandon Janice is saying it's still more games than Haskins had, but what's Haskins doing now?
Mm-hmm.
How did he pan out in the NFL? Yep. Not very well. So we'll see.
Another Ohio State quarterback.
Yep. Yeah. To your point, Adam. Exactly. It is worth noting, though, for the Atlanta Falcons that after the Pitts pick at number 4, that's kind of tough to say, they did focus primarily on defense the rest of the way. So we'll see what happens with that. I know they stocked up on a lot of defenders, safeties, cornerbacks, defensive linemen, edge rushers, all kinds of stuff. So it's worth noting that they did actually address some of those issues, but they're kind of financially strapped. And if they don't make some pretty significant moves, they can't even afford to sign any of these guys that they just drafted. I know they're going to make room for Pitts, but other than that, they're kind of hurt due to bad contracts throughout the years, giving guys like Matt Ryan a lot of money, giving guys like Julio Jones a lot of money. And now they're kind of handcuffed on what they can and can't do. That being said, do you think that there's still an opportunity for us to see a Julio Jones trade sometime between now and the beginning of the season?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's the guy on the hot seat to get traded. He hasn't been really performing too well. He can get you yardage, but he's always double and triple covered. So why spend all that money on a guy who can barely catch the football? I don't think it's necessarily his fault. He's a great player per se, but for whatever reason, he can't handle the double coverage and stuff like that. And I fully expect them to trade, and that'll knock a lot of cap space off for him.
And it's also important to make a note of the fact that the Falcons did pick up the option for Calvin Ridley. So they've already said, okay, we definitely want Ridley on the squad next year. The trade rumors are definitely circling around Julio. Something to keep an eye on. And Adam, you mentioned that the Seattle Seahawks didn't have the best draft out there. In fact, I think they had one of the worst drafts of any team. They didn't have a single first-round draft pick. They traded that away prior to the draft. And in fact, they only had 3 draft picks for the entirety of the NFL draft this year. Not really that great. The one guy that they did get that's worth noting, Dwayne Eskridge from Washington in the second round. He's kind of an undersized wide receiver, but he could be a good slot guy to kind of take a lot of the heat off of DK Metcalf. So that would be the one shining spot, is if he's able to plug into like something like a Julian Edelman type role and just be there to be a consistent ball catcher out of the backfield, get those 10-yard slants, whatever it is, and open up for the big playmakers downfield.
I think the biggest issue we've seen, sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
So for the first couple of years that Pete Carroll took over the reins in Seattle, they were kind of firing on all cylinders. They picked up a lot of good guys. We got to keep in mind, though, he was just at USC for those last couple of years. So a lot of the same players he was picking up were the same players that he was recruiting for his school. It's been a long time since he's been, in college football, and he's not really recruiting that same talent. And I think we're kind of seeing, what's happening from that. Besides DK Metcalf, they haven't really been drafting a whole lot of good players. Defense, they're, whiffing out a lot of guys. The running back market hasn't been good. Rashad Penny's not panning out to be anything. Mm-hmm. Chris Carson's a great player, but Chris Carson, gets injured, like no other. But other than that, besides DK Metcalf, they haven't really done a whole lot drafting-wise that's, of any value. Most of their great acquisitions come through trades and free agency.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of teams are built that way. The Pats have notoriously been bad at drafting, and they've been good at picking up guys off of waiver wires or off of trades that end up being very one-sided. So I get that, and Pete Carroll is that same style of coach, if you will, as Bill Belichick, where he's really good at evaluating talent. I guess the time will tell on this one, but it does seem a little bit, ill-managed to only have 3 picks in the draft when the talent was so rich this year.
I got a question, Adam. Do you think Pete Carroll's career is coming to its end?
Yes and no. The problem is, they're underperforming in the sense that they're not in the Super Bowl every year, but they're overperforming in the fact that they're, for a majority of the time, making the playoffs in the hardest division in football. So it's, if you're consistently okay with if winning the division is like your ultimate goal, but you're losing the first, second round of the playoffs, then he's fine. But since that first Super Bowl that they won against the Broncos, which I'm a Seahawks fan, but it's almost coming off like a fluke at this point. Should have been much closer than what it was. But I mean, maybe it's time to kind of, do a little changeover with the head coach or give somebody else an opportunity. But it's one of those things where they want to claim, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But at the same time, are you okay with just getting to that same, you're hitting the ceiling at where you're going to go every year. And it's, a lot of the Seahawks fans are getting tired of it.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. The St. Louis Cardinals are about the same. Good in their division, make the playoffs a lot, but then never get past the first or second round. I don't think that's Pete Carroll's fault necessarily, but I just wonder if the oldest coach in the NFL is kind of had his run. He did some good things, and just for whatever reason, it's just not working right now.
And maybe I think you could be right on that. I think maybe it could be something with, the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Defense, they haven't been as good as they were with the Legion of Boom, but their offense hasn't been great either. I mean, Russell's put up incredible numbers for majority of the year, but I feel like most games when it really matters and it counts, there's a fumble here, a sack there, an interception there, and it's, there's a lot of miscues that go along, when it really matters.
Right.
So if you're powdering your numbers, the whole year, and you're throwing 5-6 touchdowns a game against the Bengals, doesn't really mean shit if you're barely beating, when you're losing to the Cardinals in the second half of the season, like that doesn't cut it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a difficult game, especially for Russell Wilson, because he's, of course, a really good player. But it always seems to go that, like, for a while, we're talking about him of being the MVP. And then just for whatever reason, the wheels fall off and he starts throwing interceptions and it just starts unraveling. I don't know if that's 100% his fault or what the case is, but the Seahawks are an interesting team to go from, one of those huge names in the NFL to going to just a middle of the road type team.
They're kind of a t-shirt team now. I mean, they're what my Texas Longhorns are as well. People wear the burnt orange and they love that logo, but I mean, they're kind of mediocre in a sense. I mean, the Seahawks are performing the same kind of way.
Yeah.
A t-shirt team. That's an analogy I've never really heard before. That's interesting.
Longhorns and Kentucky Wildcats, man, they're two of the biggest t-shirt teams in America.
I guess the New York Yankees would be a ball cap team.
Absolutely.
People just wear the hat because it's a recognizable logo, recognizable symbol to them.
Yeah, makes sense.
We talked a little bit earlier about Justin Fields and how he's now the man in Chicago. And the Bears actually told Andy Dalton about their plans to draft Justin Fields. And Dalton hasn't even played a game for him, so they showed him a little bit of respect. The Bucs told Tom Brady about their plan to go out and draft Kyle Trask from the Florida Gators, so they showed him that respect. Let me take you back to the first round of the 2020 NFL draft when the Packers were coming off of the NFL championship game loss, and they decided it was in the best interest of their organization to move up and draft quarterback Jordan Love. They did not include Aaron Rodgers in any of these plans. They did not let him know, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. How do you feel about that? Aaron Rodgers expressed his displeasure with the team at the time and then went on to win the league MVP in the 2020 season. Kind of, I guess, maybe a spite MVP, if you will. But and then they also returned to the NFC Championship once again, where the Packers would go on to lose, this time to Tom Brady and his Tampa Bay Gronkaneers. And this year, the Packers have a chance at number 29 to select an offensive weapon, maybe a wide receiver or somebody like that, to plug in there to take a little bit of that pressure off of Devontae Adams so that he's not the only man out there catching every ball that's thrown. And then they go and they get cornerback Eric Stokes from Georgia. Now, this isn't a terrible pick. The Packers notoriously have lost it in these games late because of their defense has failed them and the offense just hasn't been able to keep up. So that's not necessarily a bad pick, but I know it had to rub Aaron Rodgers the wrong way to yet again not have an offensive selection on his team. Yeah, he's the reigning MVP. Yes, they're returning 1,000-yard rusher running back Aaron Jones. Yes, they also have all-world wide receiver Devontae Adams. But in this day and age in the NFL, where you've got teams like the Buccaneers who have a plethora of offensive weapons, you've got teams like the Chiefs that they can lose half of their team to injury and still have one of the best offenses on the planet. That just isn't going to cut it anymore. And then you turn around and look at the fact that the Packers have not drafted an offensive player in the first round of the NFL draft since 2012. We're going on a decade since the last time that they drafted an offensive player in the first round. It makes perfect sense why Aaron would be upset and why he would want to potentially get out of Green Bay. Now, we've heard a lot of news this past week about the Aaron Rodgers situation and how he's unhappy there. What do you guys think about that? What do you think is the ultimate outcome? And do you think it's possible that we see number 12 donning a new uniform in 2021?
Go for it.
Yeah, I definitely think, that Aaron Rodgers probably will not be a Packer. I don't know about before the season, but, at some point during the year, I could definitely see him donning a different uniform. If I had to pick any team that he's going to end up with, and it's just because of how how aggressive this owner is, or the, head of operations is going to go about this. I think John Elway is going to, try to throw some coin at him and get him to Denver. I think that's an ideal fit. They have a good young offensive set over there with their running backs and wide receivers. I mean, defense, they've always kind of been floating around as a pretty good team, and I think that'd be a good plug and play for him. I do think he has a valid argument for being upset about not having any offensive picks over the last 10 years. However, I think in this particular draft at number 29, there weren't really a lot of viable options at receiver. I'd have to double check, all the really top talent, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, all those guys went well and early. So it's, do you take a top 50 talent at 29, or do you take, the cornerback you've been looking at that's floating around that number and say, hey, we'll come back later on in the draft and get the players, that we really can't get at that value. It's just like a fantasy draft in a way. You're not going to pick, Lamar Jackson in the first round because he's still going to be there in the 5th, 6th round.
I don't know. Some fantasy leagues have Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, all those guys going in the top 3 rounds. It's ridiculous, but we'll get into that. Yeah. We'll get into that fantasy season.
Yeah, I don't get that pick either, but it goes without saying. I mean, they've done well in the past with getting certain receivers that, I mean, the one that panned out for a while that wasn't picked in the first round was Randall Cobb off the top of my head. He balled out in his prime, and they've been a couple of guys here and there that really had good flashes of receiver, but as of late, the only 2 that really stuck around and really gave Aaron a legitimate, safety net was Jordy Nelson and now Devontae Adams. And so I think, at this point, if you're paying this guy the majority of your salary cap, you got to make him happy because, as we see it now, he's trying to jump ship as soon as he can.
I think Aaron should have seen the writing on the wall whenever they drafted Jordan Love that, like, hey, we're kind of gonna move on. Like, it's not like Aaron is as old as Tom Brady, where he might retire next year and nobody would bat an eye. I would assume that Aaron Rodgers has about 4 or 5 years left in the league if he's healthy. And for them to draft a quarterback that high and to move up to draft him, that tells me that they're pretty much done with you, and you might want to start packing your bags. I guess, like Brandon said, maybe he went out there and balled out and threw like a FU to them and got the MVP. But this is kind of something that I saw coming, whether they were going to force his hand and say, hey, get out of here, we're going to let you go, or just move on. And if he wants to stick around, that's fine. But they definitely kind of made their mind up and said, thanks for your service. We're done. And we're going to move on to our new young guy. And I do feel bad for him that they never really gave him those weapons, but that's that team, I guess. I don't know how that GM thinks, but he apparently thinks that having Aaron Rodgers and one wide receiver is good enough. And I guess that if you want to get to the championship game, that is, but they haven't been a Super Bowl contender in my opinion, for a while, just because they have no depth. They don't have a defense. You need at least a few pieces on both sides of the ball to be able to compete.
Yeah. Just to touch base on what Adam said, Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams both were 2nd round draft picks. So you can find good talent outside of the 1st round, but it's not always the case. Just like it's not always the case to find that talent in the 1st round. But it has come out that Rodgers definitely wants out. He said pretty much that he doesn't want to come back and play for the Green Bay Packers next season unless GM, and I'm going to be careful to pronounce this name, Brian Gutekunst, unless he's fired. Straight up, get out of here. And if the team is keen on trading him, or the team is not keen on trading him, so something's got to give here. Either the GM's gone or Rodgers is gone, according to that ultimatum. And we already know that Rodgers has ran one person out of town, namely Mike McCarthy. And is this GM possibly next? Could we see the GM leave and Rodgers stay at Cheesehead?
I don't think so. I don't think they're going to pick Aaron over anyone else at this point. He's done what he can for him, and I think, like I said, I think they've made their mind up. They're gonna move on and see what Jordan Love has to offer. That's just what they've decided. I don't know if that's the right decision or the wrong decision, but it seems like that kind of coincides with just whatever that organization wants to do. I don't think the owner would have been willing to give up whatever they had to give up to move up in the draft to draft Jordan Love if they were just inevitably going to keep Aaron and do whatever he wanted to keep him happy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more and more likely that we see Aaron Rodgers going somewhere else. And Adam mentioned the Broncos as a potential landing spot and a good fit for him. It is interesting that the Broncos were in a position to draft a quarterback and they opted not to. They made another pick instead. Of course, they did trade with the Carolina Panthers to receive Teddy Bridgewater a few weeks before the draft, which puts the QB1 battle squarely between Teddy and Drew Lock, which isn't necessarily the best options going forward. Aaron Rodgers would certainly be a clear upgrade over either one of those. So it would be interesting if the Broncos were in the mix, and it is being rumored, and it was discussed on the Pat McAfee show by Mark Schillereth of Fox Sports.
Mark Schlereth?
Yeah, that's the one.
He's a former Bronco too.
A former Bronco. He works for Fox Sports. That the Broncos and Packers have at least talked in negotiations. So we'll see what happens there if anything does materialize. And
makes sense. I mean, John Elway's a gunslinger. I think he likes those gunslingers. He's going to go after a Rodgers. If anything, him kind of not capitalizing on a Mac Jones or another quarterback that was in this first round, I think it just goes to show that he didn't really care for their playing style, whether they were good or not analytically. I think that just wasn't the quarterback for his future that he wanted. Drew Lock sort of has that gunslinger mentality, but Drew Lock was not really a proven quarterback in college either.
Yeah,
he's got his flashes, but nothing that, screams long-term solution.
I agree. He wasn't the playmaker at Mizzou, and he just kind of was drafted as the best of what's left whenever he ended up going to Denver. Also, I do feel that it's my responsibility to note that Rodgers has included 3 teams on a list of teams that he would approve a trade to. And those 3 teams are the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Giants. So 2 teams there in the AFC West. So looks like he's ready to go match up against Patrick Mahomes a couple times a year.
I'm surprised he didn't put the 49ers on there, seeing as how he's a NorCal boy.
Maybe that was on his list until they drafted Trey Lance, and he's like, there's no way I'm going to go in there and compete with a rookie.
Yeah, that's fair.
That makes sense.
They drafted their long-term guy right there, or at least their hopeful long-term guy.
Right.
So if you think Aaron is going to end up on another team this year, let us know in the comments. Hit us up. Let us know where you think that he's going to end up. I personally think that John Elway is going to try to pull the old Peyton Manning play once again and get the veteran quarterback to come in, plug him in. Hopefully you've got enough for a winning lineup. Hopefully that's enough to get you back to a Super Bowl. We'll see. I think we see number 12 up in Denver by the end of the season, though, or before the season, rather.
I could see it.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, you would? You'd be into that?
I'd be cool with it.
All right. Moving on. Last week Zach wasn't able to be part of the podcast. He was out busy doing work and all that stuff. And I had a couple of baseball guys join me, so we really didn't get a chance to talk about the UFC event that happened here in Jacksonville, Florida. Of course, UFC 261 was what I'm talking about from here in Florida. And it was the event that we saw Chris Weidman break his leg in a horrific fashion. Of course, everybody was drawing comparisons to the Anderson Silva fight where he broke his leg against Chris Weidman. So it was kind of weird to see it all come about once again. The guy that he was fighting in this fight, Uriah Hall, he didn't throw a punch in the fight and ended up winning, which is kind of funny. But if you're Uriah Hall, do you immediately retire knowing that Silva broke his leg against Weidman? Weidman just broke his leg against you. Are you now like the next one that's going to have that freak injury happen to? Do you just call it quits now?
I tell you what, I don't throw very many leg kicks. If I'm
that's something you take out of your repertoire.
Yeah, it seems like there's some sort of curse going around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if I check a leg kick again. I might just try and catch it and hold it to the side. But I don't think it's a safe thing to check a leg kick anymore.
Yeah, no, that's something that I'm definitely going to avoid for the rest of my career because, that looks entirely too painful. What did you guys think of the main event that night? Of course, congratulations to Thug Rose for once again becoming the strawweight champ. She kicked Weili Zhang's head clear off of her shoulders. Looked like something straight out of the new Mortal Kombat movie. But what did you guys think about the main event that saw Kamaru Usman absolutely knock out Jorge Masvidal in the second round?
Go ahead.
To be honest, I can't remember if it was this podcast or my own a couple years ago, but I remember following Usman, and he was dominating people for a while. And I remember saying, hey, this guy is going to be a champion. We got to watch out for him. I didn't think it would get to this level because his boxing was never to the level that it is right now. I like Usman. I'm not the biggest fan of him just because I'm more into the flashier kind of guys and whatever. But I mean, there's levels to this. And if anything, we just saw that he's on a whole nother level that, Masvidal is not at. Masvidal is a great striker. Masvidal is a great MMA fighter, and he's a fan favorite. But I mean, there's just so much more complexity to what Usman brings to the table than a lot of the other fighters. I said before to you guys during the fight the last time, but he's going to fight Covington again. That was one of the best fights I've seen in the last 2 years. It was back and forth and a lot of animosity between those two. If Usman beats Covington decisively again, I think he jumps up to number one pound for pound in the world right now.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, it could be argued that he's already the number one pound for pound. So, with Khabib dropping off the list due to his retirement and John Jones moving up to heavyweight, he's unproven at that weight class. I can make a clear case for Usman to be that number one guy. But you're right. If he does knock off Covington, especially in a decisive fashion like this fight was, that there's no reason for anybody to doubt that.
Yeah, I completely agree. He brings something else to the table for sure. He's next level on the ground, and clearly he has knockout power, which I never really thought that he had that much knockout power. I don't know how Masvidal's jaw is, like chin, you know what I mean? But
that was the first time Masvidal has been KO'd or TKO'd in a fight.
Wow, yeah. So that's pretty damn impressive. Yeah, he has pretty much a whole bag of tricks that he can pull from, which is something good to have if you want to be a champion for a long time. And in this weight class at this moment, there's not too many contenders out there that can take it from him. Like Adam, I would love to see a Covington rematch because I think Covington has probably the best shot, even though I don't really consider him that much of a challenger. But nonetheless, anything could happen, and he could make it happen. But boy, Usman's going to be hard to beat, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Usman is pretty much the top of that weight class for sure, and he's going to be there for a while. He's one of those guys that I think he's going to just be able to clear out that division, and eventually he'll be like, okay, what's next? What more do I have to prove? So we'll see what happens going forward with that one. But yeah, he's hard to beat.
We'll see a lot of turnovers with the belt. Several divisions, but I think two for sure that we know the champion is going to reign for a while is welterweight with Usman and heavyweight with Francis Ngannou. I think those two are going to hang on to those belts and represent Africa, and it's going to be maybe a couple years. I think that they're going to hang on to those belts. It would take a freak accident for Francis Ngannou to lose his next fight.
Yeah, I could see that too. And I could also see Stylebender holding on to his belt for a long time too. So you could potentially have 3 African guys who hold these belts for years to come. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm going to throw another name out there that's not losing anytime soon, and that's Amanda Nunes. She is not going to get beat at either weight class that she defends at.
And Shevchenko.
Yeah,
she's pretty good too.
I don't know if that's – go ahead.
I was going to say the fight to make is the trilogy with Nunes and Shevchenko, but the ultimate thing is, do you make Shevchenko go back up to that weight, which she's obviously, undersized at that weight, or do you make Nunes cut and they fight at a catch weight? But right now, that's the only fight that makes sense for Shevchenko and I guess Nunes, because they really have nobody else in their divisions that they can really fight.
Yeah. I don't know if that's necessarily good for the sport, having all of these championships just kind of locked up for a long time without any big contenders that could take stuff away. I mean, I guess it's cool to see a champion win, but I don't, especially for the women's division, it's kind of gets kind of stale when you see Amanda just beat the living shit out of woman after woman, and Shevchenko does the exact same thing. The only one that kind of changes is the strawweight division for them. And then, like you said, we might potentially have a heavyweight that holds on to the belt for years to come. And he's a monster. So good luck to anyone that's going to try to fight him, including John Jones. Boy, I don't know. It's a weird time in the sport because you don't have those huge superstars like you did a few years ago. It's all kind of ever changing. So I guess we'll just see what happens. It's a weird time, I think.
Well, that, and honestly, UFC and ESPN, they've made it difficult to be a fan and to watch the sport. They hide everything behind the ESPN Plus paywalls, and they don't want their content getting put out. It reminds me a lot, honestly, of Major League Baseball for the past couple decades, where they only want to have control of their content. They don't want anybody else to share it. They don't want anybody else to do anything. We tried to share an audio clip of Dana White talking about a UFC event, and it got shut down on YouTube almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're trying to promote the sport. We're trying to get people listening and engaged and hearing what he's putting out there, and it's getting shut down. We're not showing clips. We were just showing, or just trying to play his voice, and it got shut off. They're very, very controlling of their content, and they don't want anybody to have access to it, and they make it very, very difficult. Even to buy a pay-per-view, you have to have like the ESPN Plus subscription, plus then you have to pay for the pay-per-view, which is $70 now, and it makes it to where fans are just either they're going to find streaming services or whatever it is, they're going out to a bar to watch it, or they're just staying and waiting for the highlights to pop up on Twitter.
Yep. You can follow along, even if you don't want to try to find a live stream. You can follow along on Twitter and know exactly what's happening. It's doing the exact opposite of what Dana has wanted to happen. He wants everybody to get on board and sign up for ESPN Plus and buy all the pay-per-views, but that's not how the world works right now. It's so much easier to get a live stream link that works, that's just as good and in HD and it doesn't cut out. And why would you pay all that money to watch one fight? It's crazy. I thought with the ESPN deal that we would have these amazing cards just straight up on ESPN to try to bring fans in, and you wouldn't necessarily have to have the subscription, but it didn't turn out that way. They just went full cash money on it and didn't care about growing the sport even more, which they have the best platform to do it on.
I agree with you guys completely.
When UFC was at its high point, it was when they were on like Spike TV putting out fight night cards pretty much every 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They did have their pay-per-view thing or whatever, but that was only like $50-$60 or whatever it was at the time. But they constantly had content on regular TV that anybody could just watch. I remember the Ultimate Fighter was on, and those fights were classic. Those were great to just tune in on a Wednesday night or whatever it was, watch an hour of basically a UFC reality show and get to watch some good fights during it. And that was, in my opinion, the zenith of the show or of the sport. And since ESPN deal, it's really gone downhill.
Absolutely. No, I mean, even more recently before ESPN, I was a big Fox Sports, fan of it being on there. I mean, it had its issues, but the way they broadcasted the fights was different. The people that they had co-broadcasting that weren't immediately in the face, they weren't MMA fighters. They stepped back a lot of the times and they let Michael Bisping and Cormier and Dominic Reyes do all the talking, and they gave that respect. You don't see that with ESPN. And I mean, it goes aside from ESPN and all the other shows too. I'm not trying to be biased, but you watch a lot of these shows and it's almost like there's a certain personality that's on these shows. Like ESPN, I can't really watch First Take anymore because I can't stand hearing Max Kellerman and Stephen A. argue. I mean, it's the same kind of way with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless, but they're a little more. I can deal with that a little bit. and yet you're calling cowards and people. I find their shows a little more refreshing than what you find on ESPN, where it's the same topics 24/7, and it's a lot of, just controlled coverage almost.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous when they let Stephen A. talk about UFC fights that he probably knows nothing about. And he's like a football, basketball guy. And just because he's a big name on ESPN, they want to get his input on some UFC fights. And it's just so weird that that ESPN rather has got their hands in this kind of stuff. That's a new world to them. And they're guys that always talk about the same crap. Like Adam said, the football guys now have these opinions on UFC fights. It's kind of off-putting. It's weird. I did, like Adam said, I did enjoy that they brought on fighters whenever they were with Fox that had good takes and that had good knowledge, and they basically let them do the commentating and the talking and stuff. I guess ESPN has their big names that make them a lot of money that they want to roll with, but it's not the same. It's not the same take that an actual fighter would have, and I'm sure there's plenty of guys that can do that job really well, but I guess ESPN is the big daddy now, and they run the show, and that's just the way it is. But it's strange because MMA is such a specific sport that I don't think an average sports broadcaster like a Stephen A. could really dive into unless he's just a huge fan or whatever. But it's a niche if you ask me when it comes to the sports world.
This is my issue though, is it's almost like they're talking down to the fans, like it's too niche, but it's really not anymore. It's such a big sport. It's gotten to the point where they brought Stephen A. on, I know specifically to bridge that disconnect between your NBA watching fans to the MMA fans, and kind of bridge that gap. And okay, this is what they're talking about. You don't need that though. You have Joe Rogan. Everyone knows who Joe Rogan is. You don't need to have some basic commentator. You already have the dude there that just put him there in between two fighters, let the guy talk, and people are going to come watch it no matter what. But when you start bringing in Stephen A. Smith, who says all these terrible comments about Donald Cerrone after he gets knocked out by Conor, and they're completely out of touch with what's really going on in the situation, it puts a bad, name on the sport. I mean, it's not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the deal with ESPN is extended until 2025. So we've still got about another 4 years worth of this partnership, and we'll see if it's renewed or if UFC is finally able to go and do their own thing once again, because I think they're losing fans, and they've got to be hemorrhaging money at this point as well. Maybe that's in part why a lot of these fighters are getting released from their contracts and seeking employment elsewhere. This past week, Diego Sanchez was released from his UFC contract, and he'll be going off to fight somewhere else in the near future, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine that this paywall has really worked out for them, because the live stream links are just so damn easy to get, and it's just what normal person is going to pay a subscription and then a pay-per-view to watch these damn fights? It's so ridiculous. And Dana comes out and says, "I'm coming after you," and whatever. He can't do anything about it. Like,
honest, hardworking Americans pay for it, Zach. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right? Yeah.
Let's clear the benches a little bit, guys. We got a few more minutes left on the show. I want to clear some benches this week. Tom Brady, Julian Edelman, and a couple other people were on a big Zoom call for the night of the draft, and Tom Brady asked Jules if he was ready to move to Florida. He goes, "Come on now. We know you're not really retired. You just didn't want to tell Bill that you wanted to come and play in Tampa." And to his credit, Julian Edelman posted on Twitter, "I ain't going nowhere, Bubs. Foxborough forever." That's my dude right there. He's not going to just be like, "Okay, yep, I want to go play with Tom, so I'm going to do the whole pull on heartstrings, pull on the retirement, play that card, and then go down there." He's not Gronk. He's not doing that. He's not singing his swan song and then going down south. He's actually retired. Good for him. I'm happy that Julian Edelman is sticking to his guns on that one. He's been so banged up and injured. His body needs the break. The Jacksonville Jaguars not only got Trevor Lawrence with the number 1 overall pick, which Great pick for them. Great fortunes for them. But they also got his teammate from Clemson, Travis Etienne Jr. at pick 25 in the first round.
I was hoping you'd bring that up.
Isn't that a guy that Adam in our group text or something said that he's a huge sleeper or something like that?
Maybe. I've been a big Etienne fan for a couple years now. He's just got a very downhill running style that I could watch all day. But I'll tell you what, just like a couple back when Russell was first drafted to the Seahawks, they had Percy Harvin. They had a couple of really big guys with Marshawn Lynch. They were putting up 50, 60 points a game. And everyone started buying those, neon green Seahawks shirts. And they just became the biggest, team in America that everyone in Baltimore and places was buying their clothing. We could see the same thing with the Jags. There's a lot of Trevor Lawrence mania going on. Everyone's following him. You got Etienne. If they start scoring big points, which I really think they're very capable of doing, we might see the Jags become the new Seahawks of the NFL.
That's a bold take right there, because the Jags have been kind of the beaten down and laughed at crew from the NFL for a long time.
And that's how the Seahawks were for a while too.
That's very true. On top of those two picks, which I think are outstanding picks, they've got that teammate chemistry coming from Clemson. They're bringing it down to Duval. It's also been rumored that a potential NFL tight end, Tim Tebow, is out there looking for a tryout with his old ball coach, Urban Meyer. What would you guys think of Tim Tebow flunking out of baseball and coming back to the NFL as a tight end now?
Maybe on the practice squad.
I mean, it had been rumored and said that if he would have made that switch back when he was originally in the NFL, that he would have been a great tight end, and he could have probably still been playing in the league as that position. He's an athletic dude. He's stayed in shape. I mean, you can tell just by watching College Game Day that he is in shape. He's fit. Is he NFL game ready? I don't know. There's some time between now and kickoff of the season. We'll see what happens with that. It's also interesting that Urban Myers bought a house within a 5-minute walk from where Tim Tebow lives here in Jacksonville. Something could be brewing on that account.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, I see the connection with them because they're still good friends. That was his college coach, and those were his glory years. But I just think, you got to be an idiot, especially as a Jags fan, if, you're looking for a tight end to be on the roster and your first thought is Tim Tebow. There's so many better tight ends out there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Hayden Hurst gets a call. His option was declined by the Falcons whenever they picked up Pitts. That would be a pretty good option in my opinion, but that is something where the Jags are seriously lacking, is in the tight end department, and they're going to want to bring in as many quality players as they can to either catch the ball or to protect Trevor Lawrence, because they don't want another situation to where on the first drive of the season, their star quarterback gets injured, like what happened whenever Nick Folk.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. According to some on Twitter, it is not okay for a guy to wear athletic shorts and a baseball t-shirt when you're going to a game on a date. Did you guys see the story about the Arizona Diamondbacks fan and his now viral date?
Mm-hmm.
I did not, but I'd like to hear more about this.
Sure, absolutely. So a guy goes out on his second date with this girl, and he's wearing a pair of gym shorts, athletic shorts or whatever, and an Arizona Diamondbacks spring training t-shirt. His roommate tweets out to the Arizona Diamondbacks, "Hey, my roommate is there on a date. Can you point the camera at him so that I can get a feel for how the date's going," or whatever. So the Diamondbacks obliged. They put him up on the Jumbotron for everybody to see. And they also share it out to their social media accounts and all this stuff. So this date now goes viral. The Diamondbacks even quote tweeted saying, "Is there going to be a third date?" and stuff like that. Well, this guy's been getting absolutely trashed by people on the internet because of his attire and what he was wearing. He's going to a baseball game in Arizona where it's hot. Why do you want him to wear like a 3-piece suit or khakis and a polo. Like, no, he's at a baseball game. Let the man dress comfortably.
And it's just a date. He's not proposing. I mean, it's like, chill out. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I live in Houston, Texas, man. You won't catch me at Minute Maid Field in anything but shorts and a t-shirt. I'm not wearing my jeans to the game.
No way.
No, I don't understand all the hate that he's gotten on Twitter, but I am happy to report that there will be a third date. Good for him.
I could see if it was a date at like a nice restaurant, maybe you shouldn't wear a t-shirt and shorts, maybe throw on a polo or something. But a baseball game is a casual event. You're there to have fun. You're there to watch a game, drink a beer. And if it just so happens to be a date, I don't think that should change the attire. You know, it's strange. That was an interesting one from the internet.
Real quick, Brandon, what was she wearing?
She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. She was wearing holy jeans, actually, like, you know, the ones that are, you know, pretty much like half the material of a regular pair of jeans. It is what it is. 40-year-old Michael Vick ran a 4.72 40-yard dash. Pretty impressive. Realistically, do you think any of us could beat that?
No.
Right now, no. Give me about 6 months. I got a bad calf strain right now. I was training for a half marathon and put too many miles on in the first week, and I got a bad strain, so I can't run at the moment. But yeah, I can't do that. No, I just maybe there's like a cougar chasing me, but if it's just me against the clock, I can't do it.
I think I would probably clock in at about 7.5 seconds for my 40 time right now. 40 years of age, still being able to clock a 4.72 40. That beats a lot of current NFL players. And I don't know about you guys, but yeah, going for a run for a half marathon or going for even a mile run, you're not sprinting. This is a sprint. This is a very like specific set of muscles and a way of running that you don't really practice. You know what I'm saying? So, we got Ryan is saying his 40 time is a solid 6.2. Yeah, you're not beating Vic either. He's smoking us. And this dude's 40 years old. He's been out of the league for a while, and he can still go like that.
That's that fast twitch muscle, man. There's a technique to it that, you know, is not really taught. It's all, you know, it's part of how you're born. I mean, it's God-given talent right there.
Yeah, I agree. That just goes to show just how much of a freak he really is. We really missed out on watching some good football when he had to go to jail for fighting dogs, but he is a crazy talented dude. And yeah, I don't think that'll ever slow down. It's one of those things like with Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders and those guys and Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker can still run like an insanely ridiculous 40, and he still does like 100 push-ups a day or whatever. There's just certain guys that are built different, you know, and absolutely Mike Vick is in that category.
Speaking of 40s, I don't know if you guys really watch the combine at all, but the greatest part of the combine is when they take the fastest 40 times and then they put like, you know, a ghost, and they race Rich Eisen against those players, and he's running in a full suit, and they just show how bad the gap is.
Yeah. Love it. I would love to replace Rich Eisen whenever he's done with that little shtick. I would love to be the guy that gets brought in to do that. I'll throw on a suit and run a 40. Yeah. Who cares? It'd be great.
And this is the average Joe's run.
Yeah, I would get smoke checked by everybody, I'm sure, but it's great. It would be so much fun. All right, that's all the time we got for tonight. Thank you guys so much for contributing and adding to the conversation in the comments. Adam, thanks so much for coming on and talking with us about the NFL draft, and we got into some UFC and all kinds of stuff. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Do you have anything that you want to plug or promote right now?
Congrats to Sam Ehlinger for being drafted. I was worried you weren't going to get drafted. You got a lot of heat in there, you know, in college for the Texas Longhorns, but you know, every Saturday you came out to play, and you know, I loved you as Longhorns quarterback. I think you're going to be a great, hopefully QB2 for the Colts in that new system.
Yeah, for sure.
But we'll see. I guess Brandon's frozen.
Yep, he sure is. So this will be us signing off, and catch us next week when we're right here live for another episode of the Nest Podcast. Peace.